Thanks, Kira. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining this latest National Centre for Diversity, Irish Centre for Diversity National Diversity and Inclusion Awards webinar. I'm Andrew Campbell-Edie. I'm the Communications Manager at the Irish Centre for Diversity. Just to self-describe, I'm a black man. My pronouns are he, him. I have close cropped hair on my head, otherwise known as bald, and a black moustache. I'm wearing spectacles and I'm in front of a white virtual background with the Irish Centre for Diversity logo and our coloured triangle branding. I'm wearing a grey collared top. So about today, we recently held the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards to recognise and celebrate the valuable work being done to progress diversity and inclusion in Ireland. This webinar series has been devised to share the insights and experiences from the sponsor, the winner, and the other finalists, so that any learnings can be applied to your organisation or to help with entering the next award cycle. Today's session focuses on the category Advancing Allyship and Bystander Engagement. This category recognises an organisation's commitment to creating a culture where team members feel empowered to support colleagues from any marginalised or disadvantaged group. This is now needed more than ever. About our sponsor is Sisk, and they are a family-owned business that they're innovative, international construction and engineering concerns. They have a long-term vision and over 165 years in operation. As a first-time sponsor, they chose to support our newest category, Advancing Allyship and Bystander Engagement. A quick reminder that Sisk, like the other sponsors and the Irish Centre Diversity, had no part in the judging process and couldn't enter themselves, even though they are a powerhouse in diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and they proudly hold Investors in Diversity Gold. Some housekeeping. I'll shortly hand over to Amy from Sisk as our award sponsor, and then we'll hear from some of the finalists and end with the award winner, wrapping in about an hour. We're joined by Catherine White, our ISL interpreter. The session's being recorded and will be available on the Irish Centre for Diversity website. Everyone is muted except the panel. Please share any comments in the chat function. We'd love to hear which organisations you're joining us from. There may or may not be time for Q&As, but you might get answers to any burning questions you have by connecting with any of the panelists on LinkedIn. And without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our host for today's session, Amy Martin, who is the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Partner at Sisk, and she'll shine a light on their organisation's D&I advances and lead what's sure to be an insight-packed conversation. Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and good morning to everybody. So as Andrew said, my name is Amy Martin. I work for Sisk, which is a construction and engineering company, and I am the dedicated EDI partner here. To self-describe, I am a white woman. I have brown hair tied back in a ponytail with gold-rimmed glasses, and I'm wearing a black blazer with a white t-shirt, and my pronouns are she, her. So I first just want to take a moment to explain why it was so important for us to sponsor this particular award category, which is Advancing Allyship and Bystander Engagement. Allyship is something that's really, really important to us here at Sisk. I think particularly in today's geopolitical landscape, where standing up for equality, diversity and inclusion can sometimes feel like an uphill battle, which means that it's more important than ever. And I think too often the burden of challenging unfair treatment falls onto those who are experiencing it. And in my opinion, that in and of itself is an injustice and an unfairness. So we strongly believe in the power of allyship and active bystander engagement, or being an upstander, as we call it. And I know a lot of other finalists in this category use that phrase as well. So it was really important for us to support this new award category as a first-time sponsor because it really resonates with us. We want to recognise those who champion inclusion, who speak up and who take meaningful action to create positive change for their companies and for their communities. As we all know, it was International Women's Day on Saturday, and the theme for this year was Accelerate Action. And that's a theme that we're embracing across EDIB in our organisation. For us, it's not enough to just talk about what we need to do. We actually have to go and do it. And to do that without allies is very, very difficult. So we need to band together, we need to support one another, and I'm really proud that we could support this award category and that we get to hear today from companies who are driving real change and who are championing allyship and bystander engagement. So I'm going to talk to you just for a couple of minutes about our approach to EDI at Sisk. So we use the term equality, diversity, inclusion and belonging because we feel like that captures all of the activities that we're doing. And it's really important for us to not just make sure that we're diverse and equal, that we're really making sure we create a culture of inclusion and belonging. So we have two main goals. The first is to embed equality, diversity, inclusion and belonging in our culture, and in doing so to create an atmosphere and a culture of psychological safety for our employees. And the second is to build a workforce that reflects the society that we work in, the communities that we serve, and has external impact. And as Andrew said, we were delighted to be awarded the Investors in Diversity Gold Mark for the initiatives and activities that we're doing in this area. To give you an idea of the structure of EDIB at Sisk, we have a dedicated team. Like I said, I'm the EDI partner. And then we have Marina Leleko, who's based in the UK, and she's our head of learning, development and inclusion. We also have a steering group, which is made up of senior members of our business, including our board members and our CEO, who provide governance and strategic oversight and make sure that EDIB remains a high priority at the highest levels in our business. We have 4 specific employee resource groups, each focusing on a different area of diversity, from gender to culture to LGBTQ+, to neurodiversity. And they are employee-led groups, which in themselves champion allyship. They make meaningful change in our organisation. They're involved in policy implementation, celebrating and spreading awareness. And then finally, we have a 3-year strategy, which is called our Inclusion and Belonging Compass. So this is our guiding framework to make sure that our initiatives are structured, intentional, impactful, and measurable. So it might sound like we're doing a lot in this space, and we are, but there's so much more to do, particularly because I am in an industry that traditionally has not been perceived to be very diverse. So I'm really looking forward to listening to the other finalists and our winner to understand what you're doing in this space and what we can do to emulate that and to make our industry and society more inclusive. So we're very lucky to be joined by 2 of our finalists and our winner here this morning, but there were 3 other finalists who unfortunately couldn't be with us today because of scheduling issues. But being an award finalist for the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards is such an achievement in itself. We didn't want to go forward this morning without acknowledging that. So I'm going to talk you through the finalists who can't be here today and just read out some of the judges' comments for them as well. And to reiterate Andrew's point, we weren't involved in the judging process, so I didn't see any of the applications. So I'm very keen to hear about the judges' comments. So the first finalist that we want to acknowledge is McKesson. So for McKesson, the judges applauded the fact that they conduct regular workshops focused on allyship, providing employees with actionable strategies to support their colleagues. They provide support for speaking up against discrimination and have created an all-round more inclusive workplace. So huge congratulations to McKesson. Next up, we have William Fry. The judges were really impressed by the programme that William Fry has created to identify Speak Up champions. Colleagues can approach these champions about any inappropriate behaviour that they encounter or witness and ensure that corrective measures are actioned. The judges were particularly impressed by the framework, which empowers team members to go, something that we like to call as well, from bystanders to upstanders. So that really resonates with us. So congratulations to William Fry. And then finally, last but not least, we have Glenveagh Properties. So a standout moment for Glenveagh was their journey and their participation in the Dublin Pride Parade. They had the Glenveagh House of Love float with employees in rainbow high-vis jackets, proudly demonstrated that inclusivity can flourish in every corner of the industry. Sisk was also at the Dublin Pride Parade last year, and to see construction companies coming out loud and proud in support of our LGBTQ colleagues was incredible, and I really can't wait to see us do it again this year. So moving on now to our finalists, who I'm sure you're all very keen to hear from and would love for me to stop talking. We're joined by two of our finalists today, Brown Thomas and Core, and by our winners, the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. So I'm first going to welcome our finalist, Brown Thomas, who is represented by Sarah Winton. So good morning, Sarah. Sarah, the allyship training, unfortunately, at Brown Thomas was put to the test on the 23rd of November 2023 when riots broke out in Dublin city centre and reached the doors of Arnott's. I was practicing as a human rights lawyer at the time, Sarah, and I was at a conference in Dublin city centre on that night where we were talking about how we can better support asylum seekers and refugees in Ireland. So to see the riots break out was obviously hugely disappointing, but very, very scary. And to be in the middle of Dublin city centre on that night, I can only imagine what it was like for the people who were working in Arnott's. So your entry for this award, it described the aftermath of the event, saying that it wasn't just about repairing the physical damage. It was about addressing the emotional and psychological impact on your team members, particularly those from underrepresented and marginalised groups. And I can only imagine the impact that it had. The judges were impressed that your CEO issued a strong message condemning the riots and said that counselling for team members was provided in the following days. And I just want to commend Arnott's on the activities that you had in the days after, because I'm sure there was a lot of employees who were impacted by that. So Sarah, how did it feel to put your allyship training into practice in such a real way?
Well, I suppose you never want to have to do it, I think that's kind of the cornerstone of a lot of the policies and practices and things that you put in place as people or HR teams is they're insurance policies. You never actually want to have to use them. And I think, as we've reflected on that experience, as we've reflected on this application, on this award even, I think, the theme that comes out time and time again, certainly for us, is, the fact that we were able to switch on the resources we had and spent a lot of time and energy in establishing a very firm foundation that we could call on in an event like that. So you never want to have to do it, but it was certainly there for us. And I think while the application for the award very much centered on that night, the riots and its effect on Arnott's, our journey really starts way before that. And I think it's allyship and engagement and that feeling of a collective community amongst our team members really starts like before they even join the organization. So it's very much we set the tone from our onboarding on in terms of our training that team members are offered. We have diversity, inclusion in the workplace, inclusive leadership, our code of ethics, so, as you're coming in the door, the expectation is set that this is what you can expect from us. You can expect a community that will uplift and support you. And when we were kind of initially talking about this, and we had our, interviews before during the assessment, we kind of reflected that a lot of organizations focus a huge amount of energy on sort of diversity by design, making sure there are quotas and representation in groups and all this sort of stuff. And that's very important, I think, depending on where you are on your journey. It's absolutely essential. But I think for us, for this moment, it very much was inclusion by default. And that's what allowed us to kind of turn around and say, this is an awful thing that's happened. There were all sorts of aspects that we had to look at it from in terms of, health and safety, facilities, all of those immediate things, but also then it's how do we show our team members that, the energy has changed, right? And there was a huge conversation around this in the days and weeks that followed. And how do we say, we support you? We absolutely, we understand that many of you are scared, that that you might be worried about coming into work because, you feel you may look different than everyone else and that makes you stand out, or, things like that. Well, also, I mean, putting the doors, being a business, like there was sort of a cultural expectation, that, and we were open the next morning, at noon. And so I think it was very difficult, but having that foundation of very strong policies, a very sort of firm resource library to pull from, and not just have to say, look at our policies, we've got policies on this, just follow them, but to say, we have policies that we live and breathe, and we're going to support you in this, and we're going to stand behind them, and this is so the resources that are available in this support. So that's the short version.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So much to unpack there. I think it's just such a good example of allyship in action. I think sometimes we can get really caught up in everything that we're doing, and sometimes it can seem a bit performative, I think, at times, whereas this was really allyship in action. And unfortunately, it was the circumstances that you were in that you had to take that action. But I suppose it put all of your policies into practice, like you said, and really hit home for everybody that you're not just saying this is something that you're really embodying as an organization. And I really love the idea of, depending on what stage of your journey you're on, it can be diversity by design in the beginning, but then it's inclusion by default. And I think different organizations are on different levels of that journey and different stages. And it's okay to be working on the diversity by design in the initial stages, but where you want to get to is this inclusion by default. And it sounds like Arns really are there now, which is incredible. So thank you so much. So moving on now to our next finalist, which is CORE, and CORE is represented by Catherine Fitzgibbon. So Catherine, the judges loved that you identified creating a culture of trust as the first step in advancing allyship at CORE. One of the most impactful ways that you foster allyship is through role modelling and leading by example. And a great example of this is your very own CEO, who has been a very vocal advocate for the challenges that women face. He has shared personal experiences, participated in business and industry panels, and ensured that managers across the company receive specific training on how to support women at various life stages, thus creating an environment of trust where women feel confident to ask for any support that they need. And it was just International Women's Day on Saturday, I've mentioned, and I did see that CORE had been awarded Great Places to Work for Women. So congratulations on that. What an achievement, and what a timely achievement as well. So Catherine, would you mind talking us through how important it is for CORE to have male allies for women in the workplace and to lead by example, as your CEO has done?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to self-describe, so I'm a white female. I've straight blonde hair today, although it was curly for the panelists yesterday, just to confuse them. I am wearing glasses and my background is blurred. It's really, really important to us, and it is. So over the last 16 years, we've tried to build like a high trust work environment, and that really has allowed people to show up as themselves, but also for colleagues to support each other. Which is really fundamental kind of to our strategy around allyship. And because of that, we spend a lot of time co-designing and engaging with employees as to what do they need at this life stage in their life. So our whole strategy around wellbeing and other areas is around co-design of a life stage strategy and supports that cover all of those things. And with both men and women involved, and it looks at every area from when you start the business right through to menopause. So we have career breaks at the very beginning, right through to maternity, fertility, menopause, right through to kind of retirement and everything in between. And then some of the challenges that we face within that as well, like cancer, like including female issues like endometriosis or other gynecological issues. All of that is in between. And having male supporters on that journey is really, really important. And how we tend to launch or promote those initiatives or life stage initiatives that we introduce is we tend to do an education session. So it's really important that everyone understands how they can be a really, really good colleague and support other colleagues who are going through any of those challenges. The second part then is obviously co-designing with our colleagues those initiatives. And the third part then is a panel discussion. And because we're in the communication and advertising business, storytelling is our bread and butter. We really, really love telling stories, and our colleague stories are the most impactful. But having balanced panels on people who are going through and hearing, their challenges in their life, but also how people can support them. So we have panelists who are supporters and how others can support colleagues who are going through those things. So, and the same applies for International Women's Day. So this year we have our male colleagues part of our panels, and they're showcasing how they can be allies, which is really, really important, as well as our training function, and as well as the launch of a brand new program. The great thing about Core, and we're in a privileged position as well because we're in advertising and marketing, that we can also have an impact as an ally externally. So over the years, we've worked with Pride Vibes, as I am. Most recently, we worked with as Women's Aid on the launch of their research before Christmas. And literally last month, we're working with Purple House on their launch of their Working with Cancer policy, spearheaded by our very own Nicola Gillan, who is an employee of Core. And that was launched at the Great Place to Work events in February. With what they really want to do, and what we really want to do, is create a whole kind of momentum behind every workforce or every work company or every place who employs employees really across Ireland, having a support system in place for those who are either living with cancer or working with cancer. Many of us are working with cancer in Ireland today. But the allyship movement around that, both internally and externally for us, is really important, and it's embedded in our values of togetherness and making a difference. And the making a difference is really what we want to do.
Yeah, thanks so much, Katrin. Again, lots to unpack. A couple of things that I picked up on there. Just your point that the starting point is always education. I'm a strong believer that knowledge is power, and I do think that that's where you need to start. It's education. It's raising that awareness and just giving everybody the basic understanding. Because sometimes if you don't have that understanding, it can be a bit overwhelming for people to get involved or to put their hand up and to say, I want to be an ally, but I don't really know what that means. So start from that place of education, I think, is so important. The other thing that I really liked that you said was co-designing with employees. I know that when I came into this role, I was very much of the opinion that, you have to embody that idea that there's nothing about us without us. So, me standing here and telling employees from underrepresented groups across my business what I think would be the best thing for them is one thing. I've lots of ideas. But if I'm not impacted by certain unfairness or certain unequal treatment, who am I to say what's best for anybody else? So you need people who are impacted by an issue to be at the table, to be talking about the issue and to be part of the solution. So I really like that, you have all of your employees co-designing the solutions.
100%.
And then the last thing, Katrin, was just that I think you've touched on a really important point, considering it was International Women's Day, that the importance of having male allies with us. I think sometimes men are afraid to kind of step into this space. They're a bit afraid of overstepping, of veering into the mansplaining type of thing. We had a huge industry event on Friday for International Women's Day, and it was incredible to see so many men there. For the women in the room to know that we are being heard, that we are being supported, that men are taking this seriously, that while some of the issues might impact them, that they're willing to learn, but also the acknowledgement that gender inequality affects everybody. It's not good for anybody. So it's good to have men in the room and to be part of that conversation. So I really liked everything that you said there, Katrin. It seems like you're doing just incredible work in this space. So thank you very much. Okay, so last but not least, we are moving on to the winners of this award category. which was the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and they are represented today by Jennifer Duffy. So Jennifer, first of all, huge congratulations on being the winner. I know it was a very difficult category to be in. You were against some very strong competition. So I think to come out as the winner in this is just such an achievement. So I just want to read some of the judges' comments for you, Jenny, as well. When they selected RCSI as the winner, they said that you successfully demonstrated buy-in at every level of the organization, which in itself is very impressive. You embedded the work that you're doing into training programs, using case studies to assist people in navigating the work that you're doing in various settings. And you touched on issues such as racism, intolerance, and misogyny. You considered matters like power dynamics and other factors that can have an impact on you. And you brought leadership, staff, and students along on your journey. The judges described this as a perfect case study in how to implement an allyship strategy. Super impressive, massive congratulations. So Jennifer, can you talk to us about what this award means to you and what's next for RCSI in this area?
Yes, thank you so much. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jennifer Duffy. I'm the Equality Project Officer at RCSI, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with short brown hair and a fringe, and I'm wearing a multicolored, rainbow-colored dress. And behind me is RCSI with the rainbow pride flag and the trans pride flag as well. So we were really honored to win this award, very surprised. It was a very strong category, and it was really wonderful to see the range of industries and sectors represented, to see that this work is happening all around Ireland in different industries. And I suppose it's provided an amazing platform to share about being an active ally, an active bystander, both within our organisation and externally. And it's also been a real source of pride for us, particularly at this uncertain time when working in equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I want to really emphasize that our team is small. We have 4 people on our team, but this award is really for everyone in the organization who's contributed. So our students, our staff, and our different partners with advocacy groups and charities. So we like to speak about moving from a team of 4 to a movement of hundreds and engaging people across the organization. So although I'm here today, it's really a lot of people's work that have gone into these initiatives. And we really think that it's a great opportunity to show how we can all play a role in making our organization and our society safer and more inclusive for all. And I think as well to show that everyone does have power and has a chance to make a difference. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed and powerless at the moment, but through being an active bystander or an upstander, we can make a difference and help others. On a personal note, I think that everyone who works in the area of equality, diversity, and inclusion does so because they have personal experience in this area. They may have experienced discrimination or be part of minoritized communities. So it's really important to me, this work, and to really hear about the different initiatives that you're all doing. It's very moving. It's great to hear about the work going on in Core and in Brown Thomas and Arnott's as well. And I think to really have a sense of hope moving forward, and that lived experience is really important to us. So in creating our bystander intervention program, we worked with students and staff who shared their own stories, and these were used to develop the scripts. We also worked with organisations like the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, Kenny, which is the Transgender Equality Network Ireland, and Spina Bifida Hydrocephalus Ireland to review the different scripts. And as we had actors as well with lived experience acting them out. So really just to make it as authentic as possible and to make sure that we were representing the different communities. And we have scenarios addressing transphobia, sexual violence and harassment, racism. And then we also have a virtual patient scenario. So this is a scenario that's based in a clinical setting. So for our students to help them prepare before they go on clinical placements, to look at the power dynamics and how can they respond in an appropriate manner if they witness misconduct or discrimination. And it allows you to pick different options and receive feedback on whether that's an appropriate intervention. So and there are scenarios addressing misogyny and racism and looking at caring responsibilities as well. So it's very meaningful for us to have this recognition of the program. A lot of work went into it. It was launched in 2023. But before this, we also had a bystander intervention program that was primarily focused on addressing sexual violence and harassment. So this online program, it's broadening out our focus and it's allowing us to address misconduct in more areas, in social scenarios and professional and across the equality grounds as well. And in terms of allyship, I think it's been to receive this award, it's really positive recognition of the work we've been doing across our staff networks. So we have the Age Friendly Network, the Intercultural Network, Parents and Carers Network, Pride Network, and Women's Network. And each of these has a champion from the senior management team who's actively engaged. So we have people from different levels of the organization working together and reinforcing the importance of this work, as well as having it included in our institutional strategy. And we really feel it's just so important, particularly as a very international university. There are students from 103 different nationalities studying here. So it's really important that we are providing an inclusive environment for them and also preparing them for working internationally with patients from all sorts of different backgrounds. So it's just been a really wonderful recognition, and I just feel so strongly about the impact that bystander intervention can have. I know personally myself, when someone has intervened in cases where I've witnessed homophobic behavior, to have someone else step in rather than me having to do that when you're being personally affected, it's really powerful to have someone else step up and just stand with you in that moment. And I think the message we really want to get across is that everyone can make a difference, that being an active bystander doesn't have to be doing something really directly and calling something out, but it can be distracting, changing the message, changing the topic of conversation, or documenting the incident and reporting it when you see misconduct or discrimination happening. So I just want to say a big thank you to the Irish Centre for Diversity, the judges and Sisk for this great honour, and congratulations to everyone on the work that they're doing in this area.
Brilliant. Thanks so
Um,
much, Jennifer. I really love what you said at the beginning is that you're a small team of 4 people, and it's similar to us, we're a small team of 2. But it's not you who does it all by
yeah.
yourself. We're of the opinion that's everybody's responsibility to create an inclusive workplace, and you wouldn't be able to do this work on your own, but you also wouldn't
Mm,
want to do it on your own. And the people who are driving these initiatives are often driving it in a facilitator role, and we're
Yeah.
allowing others to bring their ideas to the table and to take ownership and to drive the action. We're coaches, we're facilitators, and we're here to help and support. But if we didn't have our ally network across the businesses, we wouldn't be able to do anything. We wouldn't be able to
yes.
make a meaningful change. Some of the other things that I really like that you'd said, Jennifer, was just around working with the external partners and working with people who have lived experience. That's something that I've always tried to do throughout my career is when you're trying to implement a new policy or you're trying to craft a case study, it's a really good idea to do that with external partners
Mm,
who work on this matter day in and day out. We can try to be experts in various different areas of diversity, but unless you have an external partner who does this day in, day out. That's what they live and breathe. And they can talk us through the evolution of language as well. You know, language changes so quickly. And even though we might mean well by certain things, it's great to have that external partner to have those checks and balances in place to make sure we're hitting all those nails on the head, that we're doing everything correctly, that the language is correct. And also to have people with lived experience, it just makes it so much more authentic. And to have those case studies to really bring things to life. Because I think sometimes the education pieces are the great starting points. And then when you have the case studies, it makes it so much more real and authentic and so much more relatable. And I think people react to that kind of learning very, very well. So I love that. And then it's just to say for anybody who is listening, who is on your, starting out on your journey as a company, don't feel like you have to do it on your own. Do feel like you can reach out to those external organizations. I'm sure Catherine, Sarah, and Jennifer, your experiences have been the same as mine. As if you reach out to an organization like TENI, which is the Transgender Network in Ireland, to talk about introducing a gender identity policy, could they review it? They're always more than happy to get involved. Like, they want us to have strong policies, they want to have strong allies, and they want to see organizations who are here driving meaningful change. So get involved with those organizations, support them in whatever way that you can, and they will return and support you to implement real change. So don't feel like you have to do it on your own or that you have to have it all figured out. So that was everything for me. Thank you so much, Jennifer, Catherine, and Sarah. I have learned so much, and I'm definitely going to be taking up the offer to connect on LinkedIn to learn more about the different initiatives that you're implementing. I'm going to pass it back over to Andrew. We have a bit of time left for Q&A, so we're happy to open up the floor and take any questions. Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thank you, Amy. Thank you for the great hosting there. Because we have time, I'm going to come back to some of the points that were raised. And the first one I'd like to come back to is, Amy, your point about speaking to experts out there, external partners. And I often say that diversity and inclusion is one of the areas where there's no competition. Everybody benefits when expertise is shared. And this is one of the weirdest things, but it's one of the few areas where competitors, your peers, will share knowledge in this area because they appreciate that point that everybody benefits when there's progress in this area. So don't be afraid to just pick up the phone or send the email, reach out to whoever it might be out there, and those could be your peers and your competitors. So absolutely, just knock on doors. It's not difficult.
Yeah, I definitely echo that point, Andrew. I think the people are always very open in this line of work. People who are chairing committees internally, who are working in EDI roles. If you send an email or a cold message on LinkedIn and just say, I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. We would love to replicate some of the programs that you have. I've never met anybody who said no. Everyone's been really open. So do pull on your network, get introductions, start meeting new people inside and outside your industry, because everybody is really happy to share ideas. Because like you said, we all benefit.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. And the other point I wanted to raise is going back to Sarah at Brown Thomas, going back to Sarah's point about policies and procedures not needing to live or shouldn't be living on a shelf and gathering dust. They should be lived as part of the organization. And I sometimes hear about organizations or people who say, oh, we don't really like policies and procedures. We're not into rules. We just trust that our people will do the right thing. And that's all well and good until you need those policies and procedures. And Sarah, you had the term of they're almost like an insurance policy. Yeah, that's true. But as you say, they should be lived within the organization on a daily basis and evolve as needed, so that when they are needed, it's not we need to go back to the shelf and gather it and just read up about it. No, you need to be able to act as a reflex action, and it should be just flexing muscles that you're used to flexing. So well done on that. My next point is to talk. It's a question, actually. It's I can't remember who raised the point, but I think it might have been Catherine at Core. It was about trust and how allyship is an extension of trust and an embodiment of trust, if you like. And I just wanted to ask Catherine or anyone else on the panel, what steps, and trust is very hard. It's kind of a long road to build up trust. But what steps have you taken, or would you advise taking to build that trust within your team and your colleagues that will enable bystandering and allyship to come forward?
It's an interesting question because I think trust is fundamental to most, like to everything within business, including growth, including D&I, everything. Productivity is in there and everything. So it is fundamental, I think, to most things. Interesting. We've been working with Great Place to Work Ireland for the last 16 years. So we have, and that is a high trust index. So it's a survey, basically, but gaining insight from the people you work with, getting the actions then. So how can we increase trust? How can we do things better? What do you need from us? How can we make this a great place for everybody to work and to show up as themselves, and support each other? Gaining that insight, gaining that feedback in a really honest way, but more importantly, actioning it. So making changes, ensuring that, the suggestions that are made, that what people are saying is implemented and that you're engaging with them to create meaningful change across your business. And then showcasing that, like change your behaviours based on that. And that will definitely increase the trust levels across any business. But the action piece is really important. So you can get all the feedback in the world, but unless you action the change, people are going to find it very hard to build that trust piece.
That's a perfect answer. Thank you very much for that. It's funny. In my notes, I always think in cliches, and I wrote down training, talking, and I couldn't find a third T, so I put trust. So thank you very much for explaining more of that. The other place I wanted to go was talking about allyship some more, and I'm not a D&I trainer, so I'm straying outside of my comfort zone. But I've heard our CEO, Sonak Chowdhury, talk about the inbuilt, if you like, human need for trust and allyship. And it goes back to, when we were cavemen running around trying to avoid saber-toothed tigers. It comes back to that strength in numbers thing. And Jenny, I think you made that point very strongly about how having somebody else speak up for you, somebody else having your back, is so powerful. And yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to make that point that it is so key and it shouldn't be overlooked at all. I think that we were quite late in coming to the allyship piece. It's a new category for us in the awards, but realised that it's such a powerful area, and sometimes it's often seen as an add-on. So we'll do the quotas, we'll do the rest, and then we'll work out the diversity, we'll work out the recruitment and retention, and then we'll come to allyship. It should really be seen as and I think people on the panel are a testament to how important it is and how it should be really woven into the whole journey, not just kind of towards the tail end of the journey. It should be really part and parcel of everything. Because what I think is important to raise is that what allyship is powerful in doing is bringing everybody on the journey. So a lot of people talk about D&I is for everybody because we're all different. And that is kind of a cliche, but it's backed in truth. But what allyship does is it brings people on board that may think that D&I is not for them. It really does get the point across that D&I is for everyone and everyone has a role to play. So allyship is really part and parcel of the whole journey, not just towards the end when all of the other ducks are in the row. So thank you very much for kind of really shining a light on all of that. I'd like to, while we've got the time, I'd like to come back to the Purple House partnership, Catherine, if you don't mind. I'd love to hear more about that and just how, I mean, it's wonderful. It's so great to hear how CORE is looking at is using the D&I lens to look at all life stages and all experiences and putting importance behind the role that, or the role that D&I can play in all areas of a person's life. So I think the Purple House partnership, as the latest of CORE's partnerships and focuses, is really important. Can you tell us more about how that came about?
Yeah, so it came about we probably launched our cancer, working with cancer policy, I think it's probably 2 years ago now. And it was a build on from what Publicis, which is our global partner, had done. But we hadn't really seen anything in Ireland in relation to that, because like 1 in 2 of us will be affected by cancer. We're living for longer with cancer. There's lots of people across Ireland who are currently working and who have cancer or are cancer survivors. But we didn't really find the supports within the workplace. They were built in different things like sick leave or insurance or those things, but it wasn't actually connected. And then we have an amazing employee called Nicola Glynn, who's our chief of staff, and she spearheaded then bringing that policy to life, but also further, she's also a cancer survivor. So she brought about the partnership with Purple House and Connor, who runs Purple House. He's an amazing guy. So we brought it to life in terms of asking every business across Ireland to have a working with cancer policy in place on the back of research that was done by CORE, a whole lot of people, CORE, a great place to work, and Purple House, in relation to some of the feedback they received in terms of disclosure and in terms of supports that they already had within the workplace. And some of those figures were quite startling and quite low. Therefore, the rally was on to ensure or to try and create momentum around every part of Ireland and every business having some level of support for people who are either working, living with cancer or a cancer diagnosis. So please sign up. It's on our website and it's on Purple House's website. But a huge well done to the team within Purple House and Nicola and Katie and all the guys for bringing this all together. It's been amazing.
Thank you. And yeah, couldn't have said the message better. Sign up. It's incredible how policies start in the D&I space, but then show their value across the board. So I know there's a great focus at the moment around, and I suppose it's tied into International Women's Day as well, but there's a great focus around in the workplace around menopause supports. And I remember we had a talk from Loretta Dignam at the Menopause Hub a few years back. And I think we were one of the first people that she'd seen and given the talk to, and we were just blown away by it. And we've kind of been beating that drum about the need for those supports, not just to live in the D&I space, but to be part and parcel of an organization's wheelhouse, really. So it's great to see things like that. And I'm sure the work that Catherine and CORE are doing with Purple House will grow legs and become part and parcel of many more businesses. So congratulations and good luck with that. Sarah, I really want to know more about Brown Thomas's approach to. I wondered how the allyship piece extends beyond employees or staff members. we heard a lot about the duty of care that Brown Thomas Arnott's has towards its employees and its people. And I wondered, did it extend beyond to the people that visit the stores?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to take a
Apologies for
moment.
dropping you in there. Sorry, jumping.
What's that?
Apologies for just coming out of the blue with that.
I appreciate the chance to introduce myself properly, which I realized about halfway through earlier. I didn't, but I'm Sarah Winton, People Experience and Internal Communications Manager at Brown Thomas Arnott's. I am a white female with shoulder-length brown hair, and I have a white background. So apologies for not doing that earlier. I had one job and I didn't do it, but here we are. But no, going back to that is in terms of if it extends beyond. So, you know, I think we have all of our policies. We do have sort of a visitor, customer and visitor code of conduct policy. That's another one that was pulled into that. Like, I think, you know, there is, generally speaking, like a zero tolerance, you know, approach to any, you know, respect is kind of the byword. So while we don't necessarily have, you know, anything that kind of shouts about that, you know, it would be the default that we don't tolerate, you know, abusive behavior or anything like that by customers. And to be honest, that is, you know, that was something that was an issue in kind of the days after. How do we deal with that? You know, how do you manage that dynamic in an environment where the customer is always right? What if the customer is not right, or is not, you know, or is not acting in a way that's in line with our values? And I think that was one of the reasons that you know, that was one of the things that we really went out to managers with after as well. So I think to go back to your question there, Andrew, around in terms of if it extends out, I would say that by default, yes, it does. You know, I mean, we certainly as a business would, you know, I always say we help people look and feel their best. You know, I mean, we exist to help create, you know, enrich our customers' lives and to, you know, help them be themselves. And I think, you know, that shines through, and the fashion industry in particular, you know, it is about that self-expression. And we have our team are trained on making sure that the experience is an inclusive experience, that if you come in, you know, that you have that. So I suppose well, there's nothing sort of like, you know, plastered on the website or anything about it. I feel like it's an environment that we quietly cultivate in terms of being an accepting space where our doors are open, you know? Does that answer
absolutely.
the question?
It completely does. And I would back that up by saying every time that I come into the stores, I do feel in a safe space, in a kind of, you know, as long as I'm respectful, I know and I'm comforted that the team around me that are in the stores would protect me. So brilliant job on having that whole allyship and respect part and parcel of everyday life at Brown Thomas Arnott's.
We actually, during the sort of interview process for this, our health and safety, our head of health and safety was one of those who came in on the conversation, and one of the stories that she told was there was a team member who had a customer come in who was transitioning, who had a customer come in for a bra fitting, and she called our head of health and safety and said, "I want to help. I don't know how to help. I don't know what to do here." And she said the very fact that she felt comfortable enough to say, "I want to help. I don't know how to help. I don't want to do it wrong." And I feel like that's where we are, is, you know, and I think to a certain extent, so many organizations out there are at that stage on the journey of you want to do the right thing, and sometimes you're just not sure. And that goes back to that partnership and having someone to ask of, like, you know, and I think, but it's that attitude and cultivating that attitude of everyone in the business of, how do I help? How can I be the best possible support for this person right now? And even if you're not sure, it's knowing who to ask and knowing who, you know, how to have that conversation and those points of contact within the organization, where even even if you're not sure how to be an ally, you know who to ask about how to be an ally in a certain situation. And, you know, again, depending on where you are in your journey, that might be the most important message that you get out to your team and your customers.
Thank you. That's perfect. And that ties into my final question, which is for Jennifer. And the link is that communications piece about signposting and bringing people on the journey with you. How do you, I mean, your entry and the judges spoke a lot about how you have gone from your team of 4 to building that army, and that army includes all the different students. And I just wondered, did you have any words of advice for anybody watching about how you engage with the student body and any huge I was going to say workforce, but any huge number of colleagues or any big bodies?
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's really the communication piece, as you mentioned, and being open. I think I've found that sharing some of my own lived experiences has really helped to build that relationship, particularly working with the students. So I've worked very closely with the Pride Society, and we worked with them on our pronoun badge campaign and the Staff Pride Network as well. So building up that good relationship and setting, I suppose, clear expectations as well, that it does have to be at times a slow process. We did a lot of consultation. We presented to different staff groups and on our clinical sites about the pronoun campaign. And I think it echoes some of what Sarah said as well, that it's okay to ask questions. You don't have to know all the answers. It's about engaging, supporting, that it's all about dignity and respect. So I think my advice would really be that communication piece, to just explain things, meet people where they are, and tell them it's okay not to have all the answers, and to move along. Sometimes it might be slower than you'd like, but to take that time to consult, to bring people on board is really important, and to get as much feedback and to action things. I think Catherine mentioned that earlier about the importance of action. So we have our next big event is the launch of our second race equality action plan. So we had student and staff focus groups for that. And for those people to see that what they shared and the vulnerabilities that they shared, the concerns, that this is being actioned in the plan and that it is being taken seriously by the organization. So as far as possible, it's really just about building those relationships and building trust.
Hey, those are perfect words to end on. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I'm all out of questions, so I'm just going to wrap up with my thank yous. So thank you to Amy for being an amazing host and for sponsoring the award category. Thank you to Jennifer as our winner. Thank you to Sarah and to Catherine as our wonderful finalists. And thank you to our ISL interpreter, Catherine, who's been doing a sterling job. And every time I look up, I remember I have to slow down. Thank you to Kira, who's worked tirelessly behind the scenes to keep this all running smoothly. And thank you to you, finally, for watching and clicking on this resource. Goodbye.
Thanks.